If everyone would stand, we'll call this meeting to order. Before we open this meeting, we will have a word of silence. Thank you. We'll ask Councilman Todd Stone to lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You may be seated. Happy New Year to each of you, and welcome to Georgetown City Council meeting for the first meeting of the new year. Today's date is January 13th, 2025. First of all, council, new ones that are here and those that are coming back, we welcome you all here. I'm sure this will be an exciting 2 years for us. So, with that being said, Madam Clerk, if you will read roll call, please.
Ms. Wilkins-Brett?
Here.
Mr. Crisp?
Present.
Ms. Hambrick? Mr. Hampton?
Here.
Mr. Minke?
Present.
Ms. Leslie Mitchell?
Here.
Ms. Tingle Sands?
Here.
Mr. Stone?
Here. Let the record reflect that roll call has been made. At this time, you've got the minutes. I need a motion from the council.
Motion, Mayor.
Motion made by Mr. Hampton. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second made by Mr. Brent. Are there further questions and no comment? Yes, ma'am?
Here's a question. I tried to go back on the video to find this council meeting, but I didn't find it. Am I correct that all the council members were here except for Millie? But in item number 3 and item number 4, does that vote add up correctly? Is that actually how the vote? Because it said roll call vote passed 6-0. Should there have been 7 members?
Councilmember Showalter showed up late, and so those votes took place before.
Okay, so he missed the next one too then. Got it, thank you.
Okay. Is there other questions and or comments? All those in favor of the motion for the minutes signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say likewise. Let the record reflect that the motion passed. You all should have received the receipt of the check registry. If you have received that by email, please raise your hand. Let the record reflect that all have received. At this time, we have public comments. A reminder that during public comments, we have decorum. You will have 4 minutes to state your business before this council. Madam Clerk will time you at 3 minutes. She will let you know when that time comes. At the end of 4 minutes, we ask that you finish and then take your seat. Let's be respectful of those that also want to speak at this time. So, Jeff Norman wants to come and speak about affordable housing.
Good afternoon, Mayor,
Good afternoon.
City Council members. My condolences.
Thank you.
I saw you come in with your godfather hat. I didn't know if I was going to kiss your ring to talk. Yeah, I think I would like for you guys in 2025 to pay attention to the affordable housing problem we have here in Georgetown. A lot of kids are graduating out of high school and they can't afford to live here. They're moving to Lexington. Not everybody works at Toyota. Maybe affordable bank loans for some housing. I mean, if I see one more apartment complex go up, I'm gonna get sick. That's for transient people. They don't put down roots. If we want to look towards the future of Georgetown, we have to have affordable housing where people actually put down roots here. You have old families who've been here for years, but yet their young ones can't find affordable housing here. And I think also by doing that, we're going to miss out on our brightest. They're going to leave us. They can't afford the housing. And those who own property here live out of the city limits. And they don't fix things. There should be something done for the renters. Policies or something put in place to where these landlords got to be held accountable. Now, I know a lot of people, if they ask to get something fixed, they're told to move out. You know, the landlord tell them, I don't want you in my property no more. We should have laws or policies or something to protect these people. It's 2025, let's look out for people from Georgetown and make sure they got a roof over their head and a place to live. Let's take care of ours. And I'm done with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Glass, Stephen Glass, on the business park.
Thank you, Mayor. My name is Steve Glass, 143 South Avenue Street, Georgetown, Kentucky. And I wanted to come by and talk about this editorial community business opportunity with Business Park. It makes several points that I think are important. One of which is the city of Berea is going to get the full 10% for the host city or county when in the deal you all turned down, the city of Georgetown was going to get 5% and the county was going to get the other 5%. And as soon as that property was annexed into Georgetown, the county was, the fiscal court was going to disappear. And, you're trying to build and staff another fire station over here. That fire station benefits the fiscal court as much as it does the city because they're getting half the revenue. Okay, so I guess if there were another fire station built because of the business park that was going to be located here, the city would have been building another fire station. The fiscal court wouldn't have had any skin in the game. The issue about the location, that if we didn't develop it for a business park, we were going to have a subdivision. Well, it doesn't look like that. I mean, I don't know, but it seems like the people that bought the property may hold it for an investment or just because they like farmland. So, that was kind of a scare tactic. And besides, this gentleman was just talking about affordable housing, but it seemed like during the discussions that of the people that were proponents of the park, they don't want any more housing. This editorial talks about that since it's not going to be a business park, it's going to go into housing. Well, they don't want any more housing. So if we're not going to have any more housing, and we have a problem with housing, then what are we going to do? Sound like that the paper and the proponents want a moratorium on any more housing. Another thing is, they're going to go over there and they're going to take land in Berea that's unsuitable for development, and they're going to level it out and then pay Berea $10,000 an acre. And besides, the footprint's going to be a lot smaller than 500 acres. So I think we probably got land over at Lane's Run that could.
You're at 3 minutes.
Oh, thank you. We probably got land over at Lane's Run that could have been leveled out and used. So anyway, just a few points I want to bring up. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, we have events. We have Martin Luther King Jr. Community March. We have Mr. John Douglas here.
While he's approaching Mayor Council, if you could remember for those who are new, you want me to push the button on your microphone. It'll light up green when it's active. I know the tech folks have said they can hear some and not others on the live stream, so just make sure to activate your microphone when you speak.
Okay, Mayor and Council, come before you to get approval to conduct the Martin Luther King March, annual march on Monday, January the 20th. Our plans is to march along the same route we normally march. That is starting at the Georgetown College Student Center and going around to military, from military to Main, and Main down to Broadway, Broadway to College Street, and then back to our starting point. And that will start at 4:00 p.m. A little prior to that, about 3:30, since the cold weather's on us right now. We're going to do a little meet and greet there right at the Student Center inside. So if you want to come early, you can stay warm until we get ready to march, and then we'll get the march done in about 40 minutes unless somebody want to walk slow. But then the code would be out. But I come before the council, get approval.
All right, council, you've heard Mr. Douglas. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion made by Ms. Mitchell. Ms. Mitchell, do I have a second?
Second.
Second made by Ms. Sams. Are there further questions and/or comments? Yes, sir.
John, just one question. I noticed in the packet, we didn't have the certificate of insurance. Have you got that, and have you submitted
Certificate of
that?
insurance, I emailed that to
Okay.
Cindy this morning.
So it's there? Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any other questions and/or comments?
Is there other events connected to after the walk at the church or?
Yes, at the church about 5 o'clock, they're going to be,
Yes.
Is that correct?
That's correct. I was gonna wait till this was done, and I was gonna announce it, and make sure that it did come out and support the city and county program that's gonna be at First Baptist. It's starting at 5 o'clock there with Dr. Robert Franklin is the keynote speaker coming out of Atlanta.
Yeah. And I think that is something separate from this event here.
Yeah.
So are there any other questions and/or comments? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say likewise.
Okay, thank you.
And it's a good event, so I mean, it's, you know, so if you want to come walk with us and take part in that, it's one of those rolling type of events where, you know, we just keep rolling and we'll do that. And then, of course, at 5 o'clock at First Baptist, Dr. Franklin's going to come in. It's a county, city event, which we have sponsored and put on, and it's usually it's a great program. So you're welcome to come and participate. Next is the coldest night of the year walk. And we have someone here. All right.
Hi, I'm Heather Johnson. I'm the director of the Gathering Place. And I'm here to ask if you will give us a permit for the medium route for the coldest night of the year walk. It's February 22nd at 5 p.m. We actually are just going to be walking on sidewalks. The event is to raise funds for the people that we help, and also an awareness event for the unhoused in our city.
All right, I need a motion.
No motion.
Motion made by Ms. Brent. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second made by Ms. Mitchell. Are there further questions and/or comments? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say likewise.
Thank
Ms.
you.
Johnson, you may want to try to do it tomorrow night, because that may be cold. Okay, just kidding. All right, moving right on. Next is my comments. First and foremost, before we start, I want to thank not only this council, but also those of you who are in the community of the passing of my wife, Trina. We were married 21 years, and before then, 10 years, he put up with me and kept me straight on the straight path, and so 31 years. And this is different. It's a life-altering change that I have to make. But the one thing that I can recall when I ran for mayor, and I told her when the time she was sick, and I asked her, I said, you know, I don't have to do this. And she reported to me, says, you know, people are counting on you to do this. And so for me, that in itself told me a lot about her. So, but to this community, thank you so much for the support of what's going on. I'm going to be fine. It's going to take time, but I'm going to do it every day. I'll fight the fight every day like she did. So again, thank you all very much from the bottom of my heart. Next, I want to give a shout out to the public works and first responders. Of course, we had an event that happened that, you know, I can recall an event like this back when I first started teaching, but never so we had an event where almost a week and a half of actual, and there's still snow on the ground, and that, but they worked 12-hour shifts to get this done. And again, you know, we're still working, and Robert and your staff and Chief Johnson, all you all people who got there every day and was doing this, much appreciative of that, because I'm telling you what, and talk with some of the mayors from Lexington to Winchester, you know, we're a little bit better off than there. But, and so I want to just give a group, my admiration for the staff that we have that takes the due diligence of doing right by people. And they're doing that. And they're gonna be working at that. So there's still probably some places where we're gonna have to do some work with that. Just like when, and they're working on that. I saw a few out this morning, still working on that. So appreciate that. And also with the trash and everything, that's another issue that's going on. So we ask people to be patient. They are working. Matter of fact, they even got the service of Rumpke to come help out with some of those. But we're just asking you all to be patient. They're working through this. Again, this is an event that you saw that was different. So I want to let you all know that. Next thing is talking about the council committees. Council, you are sure have received some information from Tracy Hoffman, which was city clerk on that. And this is the official notice of this. So keeping this in mind, these committees, these committees, and when they meet, I'll go through this list in just a minute to let you know the committees and who's on those committees and when they meet and the location. We're going to use the committees to make maybe some changes down on, but we'll talk about that later. So the committees as follows. Finance Committee, which meets on the third Monday each month at 8 a.m. at the Police Community Room. Greg Hampton and Tammy Lusby Mitchell. Police Committee meets the first Monday each month at 9 a.m. in the Police Committee Community Room. That's Karen Tinkle Sams and Kim Minke. The Fire Committee meets the fourth Thursday each month at 3 p.m. It's going to be one change from that. It's going to be the fire training station here in Georgetown. And that will be Willow Hambrick and Michael Crisp. And then Public Works, which will meet on the third Wednesday each month at 4:30 p.m. at the Police Community Room, and that's Todd Stone and Sonia Wilkins Brandt. And then on the last one is the Interlocal Committee, which is they will meet on the third Tuesday, and they do on every 3 months. So at the Scott County Fiscal Court here on this floor here, and on that committee will be Willow Hambrick, Kim Minke, and Tammy Lusby Mitchell. All right. Next, on the executive order here is the executive order on the building inspection. They had to make a slight correction, so that will be Craig Campbell is my recommendation for that Building Inspection Board of Appeals. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion made by Ms. Mitchell. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second made by Mr. Crisp. Are there any correction and, comments or? All those in favor of the recommendation signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say likewise. Thank you. And one other thing about the committees, like I said, they'll meet at those designated times. And another thing, when we do committee meetings, and just a reminder that, when we do these reports, just keep in mind that just giving us the highlights of important things that you want to bring to council that we may want a committee to consider down the road to the council, or something that's new that's happened. All right. Next, speaking of committee reports, that's what I might on that. Next, we have the city attorney, Emily. Happy New Year to you, Emily.
All right. Hello, good evening. So the first item we have is a discussion about the special events ordinance. If you all were following along towards the end of last year, this is something that the council before you had started. It is a council-initiated project rather than a staff recommended project, so please keep that in mind. So tonight, I just basically wanted to bring you all up to speed, just real quick, what the ordinance is, why we got here. One of the asks from the last council was that we conduct essentially a survey of the downtown businesses and some of the issues they were having related to the closure of Main Street. And then to talk about potential next steps if you all wanted to continue moving forward with this project. So any questions on that before I jump in? No? Okay. Okay, so real quickly, a special events ordinance, it's a set of rules and regulations that govern essentially the organization and the approval of events that use or impact city-owned property or the public right-of-way, and also events that request city services. So there are events that will request police, fire, public works, staff assistance to help set up for safety reasons, traffic and safety most of the time. The primary purpose, what we're doing here, is to create a process, more of a streamlined process for the people organizing these events to coordinate with the city to ensure the safe and orderly measures are in place to enhance the quality of the event for everybody involved. So these are pre-planned events that we're talking about. This wouldn't be a rally or something that just kind of pops up in the middle of the day. These are intentional planned events that you know it's going to impact city property. Any questions on that? No? Okay. So where we're at right now, the conversation that the previous council had led to the development of essentially an improved application process, just cleaning up the application that's in place, asking for a little bit more information so that we really know what the event is. Assigning potentially a permit fee. That fee allows us to recover the costs and the time that city staff members are investing in processing the application and getting ready in that sense for the event. Creating conditions for a permit to be issued. And it also adds factors for enforcement and an appeals process if someone's application was denied. Some of the requirements that have been talked about, creating an application window so you don't have someone in January applying for December, trying to keep it tight so that we can plan and know more, I guess, for these events in a more kind of focused time frame. Requiring that an event representative attend these meetings when there is an event that's being brought to you all, so that way you actually have someone here that can answer questions, that sort of thing. There's a component regarding street closures. We do have state right-of-way that runs through Georgetown, so we have city streets, we have state right-of-way, making sure that we understand requirements for requesting closures, and then if we wanted to set out kind of parameters or limitations on when streets can and can't be closed. The other thing, predetermined routes. You heard earlier today, one of the events talked about using the medium route. Currently, there's 3 routes, small, medium, large, and it's based on the number of participants, the type of event, that sort of thing. There's been discussion about moving the route that uses Main Street, finding a new location, and 2 or 3 meetings ago, we presented a potential route in the Lanes Run Business Park to offset that. The other route, I believe there's one currently, and I can never remember the name of this park, but it's the park on the north side of town.
Brooklyn Park.
Yes. And then the medium route, it is off downtown, like right off downtown. So it gets you closer, but you're not right on Main Street. The large route is the only one that does use a portion of Main Street. It doesn't cut all the way through. But that's kind of where we're at and where we potentially talked about heading. That also builds in discretion for the police chief if an event called for a different route or an alternate route, he would have the ability to provide for that as well. And then we talked about insurance, indemnification, making sure if security is needed, those plans are in place. The big one is talking about notices, communication, as we'll talk about in a second, between the event planner, the city, and the affected property owners. That's a big component that's missing that we've been asked to look at to solve. And then finally, a deposit for city services. So looking at if you're going to host an event that requires police, public works, fire, you would put down a deposit. If everything goes great, you get your deposit back. If for some reason something happens and property is damaged, you need more staff, there's more time that's exerted, that deposit would be chipped away and we would go from there. That's kind of just the big picture, real fast overview. Any questions on some of the components that we have talked about?
I had a question, Emily, about the window. It's like 30 days, not before 30 days or 90 days. What about events like the Festival of the Horse and things that they're generally at the same time every year? Would they have to get in line, and what if someone wanted the same date and came in right before them? And
So right now, what we've talked about is kind of a first come, there's a two-part answer to this. The first part is a first come, first serve. So you get your application in. If it's vetted, you meet all the components of this potential ordinance and you're approved, you got there first. Events like Festival of the Horse, I would probably call these more like city-sponsored events, some of the parades. You could consider, I don't want to call it an exception, but you could dedicate events that are just part of this ordinance, that those events
okay,
get those.
Are guaranteed.
Yeah.
Okay.
We've not really talked about that in depth, but the events that have been talked about, I think, are Festival of the Horse, and then several of the parades.
right.
The holiday, 4th of July, Thriller, the Fire Prevention Parade, and maybe one more.
Christmas.
Yeah, Christmas.
I even think we had talked about the Martin Luther King, including it as well.
And so that is a decision point for you all as we consider next steps. Do you want to identify those city-sponsored events, and which ones would those be? So please
I think
keep that
that
in
would be
mind.
important. And one other question, if we put this in place, usually it seems like when people bring asking for the council to vote on the event, it's not brought before council until everything has been completed. Will that continue to happen? And so we know when we're voting on it that the ordinance has been followed if we put it in place.
That's the intent, that, so the clerk's office, they would be the one receiving the application and working with the applicant to get everything in place, and then you all wouldn't be presented an application unless it was,
Okay,
all the requirements in the ordinance were met.
thank you.
Question?
Yep.
So, do we have a clear understanding of what problems we're trying to solve and what we're putting in this ordinance to be able to solve them?
So, oh, go ahead, sorry.
And so I've got a lot of those kinds of questions. There's lots of, obviously, background information, a lot of good information that I'm sure you've collected and you've utilized here, but none of that's in here. So, like fees and those kinds of things, how are we coming up with those? Are those fees really cost recovery or deposits for damage? And I'm hearing a couple different things, and I've read a couple different things, so I'm not sure which it is and what we're doing.
Sure. So some of I think there were, I would say, 3 primary problems, if we want to call them problems. One that really sparked it was the closure of Main Street. There were a lot of events coming up and the impact that closing Main Street has on parking and the businesses downtown. The second is there's a need to just improve this application process, and that falls in line with, as the council, you don't really have anything that tells you yes or no, like whether this event has everything in place, what types of requirements that if you were going to approve an event, you don't really have any guidance there. So trying to help give you all direction as you consider these types of events. And then the third, with the fees, and there's a distinction between the fee that we're talking about, the application fee, and the deposit that was mentioned. With the fee, the city can only ask for an amount that reflects the actual cost of what the staff is putting in to the work. I said that poorly. We can't just pick a number and say, $100, that sounds great. Yeah, we can't generate profit on that. So we're looking at staff time, how long does it take to process the application, to push this through, and that's where that dollar amount comes from. The deposit, that was just a solution that was proposed. Right now, I don't think we're doing a great job of collecting if city services are utilized, and that's not something you have to do. But in the interest of taking care of the public tax dollars and recovering the money there, that was something we were asked to explore.
So do we know the cost of the services that are provided, not just the application, but PD, Public Works, all those things affiliated with this? Are we trying to recover those, or are we just talking about the application?
So we're talking about both. So the deposit was picked, and with that, that is security too, because of where's public property involved, and you're just planning ahead. But ultimately, the cost of the city services, that's going to depend on the event. It's going to depend on the size. It's going to depend what resources they actually need, and a lot of that would be based on salary. We know, for example, Public Works, if they're going to put out barricades, if they're going to have to clean up, that sort of thing. So there is information that helps drive what that could look like. The dollar amount for the deposit was a suggestion to start with. Yeah.
Okay,
Does that
thank
answer
you.
your question?
Yeah, I mean, I just have lots of those
Yeah,
kind of
sure.
questions. That there's lots of background that I'm sure you've done a lot, but being new to the council.
Yeah. Well, feel free to send
Thank you.
them. Send them my way. Okay. Any other questions? Nope.
Mind if I jump in?
Go ahead.
I know Emily mentioned this at the beginning, but we don't have these that often, but with a council member initiated ordinance, the feedback is critical. So this document was generated just based on Emily's conversations with some council members, some staff members who manage these events. But for this ordinance to get to first reading, those are the kind of questions we do need to hear and the feedback we need to know. Yes, we want to plug in the overtime rate for those police officers that manage that event, and we want to recover that cost. So please share all that feedback so that we can get it to a first reading. And we had 2 events approved here tonight. We have a lot of great events, but I think good first step in getting that direction. I know Councilman Stone specifically.
And if I could, one of the events that we had, just as a matter of fact, back this past fall, was the Colors of Cancer that the hospital sponsors. Great event. I recently lost my father to cancer. I will support it. The problem that we had is that their Colors of Cancer and the powder or cornstarch or whatever they used, when they threw it, went all over people's property, went over their houses, and we had to take a fire station or a fire truck offline with firefighters that we hadn't planned for to go and spray the property down, spray the houses down to get all that off their houses. And that, along with shutting Main Street down every 15 minutes, is causing problems. And those are things that we need to recoup, that the city just doesn't need to go, it happens. That's money that we can recover, and that's a leak we can stop. So,
And I think that's where the deposit idea came from, because we can put in there that we could bill them for services. Sometimes, though, we don't know what that's going to be, and this was a middle ground to kind of find what's a reasonable way to kind of anticipate some of these things and still provide room if we need more, or if you want to wait and invoice later, that's an option also. Any other questions on this particular?
Do we typically try to cover all the costs for that, though? I mean, or to recover the cost for that? I mean, we have police at all of our parades and the walks and the runs and those things. Do we typically try to recover the cost, or is that a part of being a police officer?
well.
I mean,
And the city
and
just
should we
swallowed it.
be, is a question I would have. Should we be trying to? Because, do you think so? Because I'm not sure that isn't part of what we do for the community. I mean, I would have questions about how much it actually costs us and what is a part of our job as a community.
For a city-sponsored event, we're biting that bullet. We're spending that money in overtime. But for a private sponsored event, no, they need to pay for the services that they're using. And one of the things that, shutting down Main Street every time, it costs a lot of businesses money, and because they had to shut down early. So, this isn't something that was just an overnight thing. This was something that was thought out.
Have we ever put the dollar amount to, like, say, take a year, an average year, and have we actually ever put the dollar amount to what these events actually have cost the city? And I agree with you on public versus the private,
Well,
but have we ever actually put a
to-
dollar amount to it?
To give you an idea, and not for the dollar amount, when I was a police officer, and we would have somebody pull a fire alarm, and even when I worked security at Georgetown College, they pulled a fire alarm. That was $1,200 that was sought in recoverable money to pay the city back for those fire trucks and police officers responding. So that was money that was, money that didn't need to be spent. In the private events, I think it's something that needs to be recovered as well. But as far as the dollar amount, no, I do not have. We'd have to sit down per event and break down, and that's why they do the deposit. And once the event is over, they figure up what it cost. If it's over that, they get sent a bill. If it's under that, then they get what's left of their money back.
It might be for the citizen that wants to invest into doing their event, though. That's kind of, you can't really kind of do that to them to say, okay, well, our minimum's going to be 500, but it could be 10,000. I mean, I think we kind of need to sit down and say, okay, this average event in the past has pretty much cost the city this much money. So, and we have a lot of repeats, like Finley, all that. So we have a lot of repeats. So I think we could go back and look so that we could give, because it's not that I don't think it's a good idea, because we do give our services away, so to speak, and we don't want to raise taxes to cover those kind of things. But on the flip side of it, maybe we need to have an idea of, before we can set a $500 budget, or need to know how much are these events actually costing us. And since we pretty much, unless there's something new that's happened in the last couple of years, we pretty much do the same things over and over again with the same people. So maybe we need to sit down and pick a couple of events and actually work it out, how much they actually are costing the city to do them.
So you're saying that you may have $500 for this event, but the other event may cost you $2,500.
Exactly.
And I guess you will have to give them a separate, so we couldn't put a actual dollar amount on that sheet because it could change.
It could change, but it would be unfair for the person having the event not to have an understanding of what that price, because a lot of the people that are having the events, that's exactly what it is a fundraising for whatever their organization is. So you don't want them to come in trying to raise a couple of $1,000s and then it end up costing them $4,000 to have a $2,000 event. So they're in the hole for trying to do this. So I think we need to have a realistic, if you're going to do this, it's going to be this much. We're going to have this many officers. This is exactly what the city. If we're going to ask you for money, then this is exactly what it's going to cost the city. So you need to have that in the front of you to say, oh well, maybe I won't do that event, or maybe I'll go on somebody's private property to do the event, or so that they have options. Otherwise, you're going to get people here, and then all of a sudden, just like the color walk, all of a sudden the fire trucks have to go up and down the street to clean everybody's property off. Well, I don't know how much that costs to do all that. So that's what, if I don't know how much that costs to do all that, the person that had the event doesn't know how much, and they're going to be unexpected when they're trying to be a fundraiser to start with. So I think you really need to break that down and take a couple events, break them down, and see how much it actually costs and average it out. Maybe that way we help.
And that's what you're doing right now. This is a beginning start. That's what you're asking, the input.
Yeah, this is great
This is
feedback.
why-
This is exactly what we need
Nothing's
to
been
move
decided
forward
right now,
with.
but you're asking for all the input from.
Yeah,
from
just
Georgetown.
one idea to throw out there to Karen's point. You could have like a table with the duration of the event and size, number of people expected, and have a minimum, maximum
Yeah.
based on that. That way, whoever's having this event, they will know what their minimum cost is going to be, and they'll know what their maximum cost is going to be.
Right. Yeah, if we're going to set a price to it, it needs to be more concrete than a educated guess. It needs to be a little concrete for people.
So, Emily, would this apply to the events like the ones that we approved tonight?
Yes.
So,
No, well, sorry. In the future, it will.
okay, like, for instance, if you wanted to do the Martin Luther King walk, are we going to start paying our police back
Well,
for being involved in that?
So it goes back to this decision of if you want to have the city-sponsored events versus these private events. So that's a distinction. That's what Councilmember Stone was talking about.
'Cause
We
I can-
even, we
yeah.
were talking about including that.
Yes.
And so someone would make a decision, like, for instance, the gathering place. So would we be asking them to give $500? Because our police, I mean, that's a,
Well, it just
Nonprofit.
depends on,
That's a private event, though.
so cities have done it different ways, so you can add layers to this. You can set, if you wanted to, you could carve out nonprofit or, I don't want to say schools, but you could layer this. So you could have city-sponsored, you could have nonprofits, like truly private, for-profit. I mean, you could really play with this and make it what you want. The key is, and this is why this application process, this new process that we need, is we need to know up front what services they think they need. So if you kind of picture this with me, if we're putting 2 and 2 together, what we're talking about here, if we know how much it's going to cost to have police, if we know they need police, we have that information that we can provide them. If they don't need police, then it doesn't matter,
right.
right?
Like-
Because they're not requesting that service.
But in the past, some of these people that have done these events,
Mm-hmm.
the 5Ks, et cetera, have had police presence, and now they're gonna have to pay for it, maybe?
Well, it's not necessarily paying for it. What's proposed right now, what is proposed, or what we're looking at, I guess nothing's been proposed because it's not out there yet, but when you use the deposit approach, it's just planning ahead. I mean, you're just carving out money and saying, if for some reason something goes bad, or I know I'm going to need these services, you're kind of pooling money to go ahead and account for that before your event starts. So you're not really paying money, because if you don't use city services and there's no property damage or a reason we would have to utilize that money, you get it back and you're not.
But don't most of them use city services, the police for the 5Ks and all that?
And that's already built into the current process. They should already be charged for police services, and they should be invoiced, and we should already be recovering that. But I
We
don't think
already, outside of this ordinance,
yeah, that's currently what the process is, but I don't know that we're actually recovering that money.
Have we had an event, since I don't know what events we've had in the last year, have we had an event that, because you said city, and then you said nonprofit, and then you said for-profit, have we had an event that we have for-profit?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think we do either. I guess when you said that, I can't remember. I mean, potentially something could
Closest thing would be the car shows. The car shows would.
Okay, all right.
And they lined, and this was one of the things that brought this up. They lined up in January and said, we want to close Main Street 7 times this year. And then we had other events that come up and go, well, we can't. Or they have one specific Saturday, we had a 5K on top of the car show. The 5K wanted to close down Main Street and run through the car show, which was a nightmare in itself. So, that's where, get the 5Ks off of Main Street. They don't need to run on Main Street, and it's a state road. We need to limit the number of times it is closed, because there's enough city events that close Main Street as it is. So, city-sponsored events, I should say.
But I think I go back to my original point is, what are the problems we're trying to solve? And then let's identify the potential alternatives to solve those problems and gather the information that's necessary to be able to come up with the solutions that can be proposed and vetted, whether it's charging, not charging, whatever. But regardless, we would know what the costs would be for the things that we already do. And we've got a handle on that from a budgeting perspective and from a manpower perspective and those kinds of things.
And one of the problems that you just brought up, what one of the problems is that the left hand didn't know what the right hand was doing. And so somebody, whether we pass, however we pass it, then there has to be some kind of communication that the left and the right knows, and that has to be brought to us because we're the ones that make the approval. So we have to know, like have a calendar with every time an event comes, have a calendar to know what's been approved, when it's been approved, and we might think, oh, well, there's too many things, too close back to back or whatever. So the council needs to be fully aware of what's been approved. The city needs to be fully aware of what's been approved. Or that problem might not have happened.
And I'll speak to that one as well, and I know we harped on it, but our new city website is up. I think we're gonna be more active with that calendar, but the city clerk's office does send, when an event application comes in, and Tracy can correct me when she gets back if I'm misstating, but they send a calendar invite, and then once it's approved, it pops up on your calendar or in your city email, so you'll know this is the event on this date. The car show was an outlier when that was approved. I mean, the council was consciously aware, I mean, debating the issue at the time.
Okay.
But you will, as events come through, you'll get notifications, and you'll get all the details about the event as well. And if there's anything we can do to change that, that's another thing that can come out of this process, just how it's communicated to the council and the public in terms of that calendar.
And nothing against Lori or Tracy, either one, but I have not gotten calendar invite yet.
And we need to look at that, because I see your name and everybody else's name on them when they come through on my
So
calendar.
Is it your
I
city
don't, I haven't, yeah. And I have not gotten them, so.
And I think you have to, when you get it, you have to accept it. Because I think sometimes you have to accept, so
Haven't gotten
you have to, when you get it, you have to accept it,
I get-
accept it, so.
When Devin sends some stuff out, and Tracy too, I've got stuff that I've added to my calendar.
Okay.
But as far as any events, no, I have not gotten them.
Well,
Like
we'll have to
5K
look
or
at
whatever.
that, maybe just you, maybe.
It could be.
But we'll get that, we'll make sure
So-
we'll have somebody check on that.
Emily, just, there's a lot of good stuff here.
Yeah.
And obviously, we do need it. Is there someone who is sponsoring this, did you say, or is this coming from?
So right now, there's not a sponsor on it. This has just been conversation over the past maybe 6 months.
Yes.
It's late July, I think. There was a lot of conversation, and so we've started to shape up where that conversation is heading.
Right.
So there's no decisions have been made. All of this is still up in the air. It's just capturing 6 months of conversation, so we have a starting point so that we can pivot and make sure that we're all on the same page, because, sometimes what you say, you don't hear it the same way, and then you see it on paper and you're like, oh my gosh, that's not what I meant. So that's where we're at, and that's why this conversation is great, because there are things that fresh eyes coming in, people who have been through this process, like if we can capture these and improve it, we're gonna have a better product, so.
Absolutely.
So what happens going forward now?
So right now, I think what we need to do after we follow up on some of these items and the discussion points that we've had, I think what would happen is we continue to have these discussion-like interactions until we get to essentially a work product that we feel is ready for a first reading. And that would be when, I think our practice has been 2 of you all, but I guess you could have 1 of you, but where 2 of you all would be willing to sponsor the ordinance in its current form. At that point, that's when we would put it on the agenda for a first reading. And you could still have discussion and make the negotiations. So that's kind of where we're at and where we need to get to.
Okay.
So we can have as much discussion about it as you all want. We just need, the other option is, if you don't want it, we also need someone to say we don't want it, and we can just be done with it and move on to something else, so.
And I do like the idea of the layers, because the nonprofits they need to have their space involved here, so, doesn't hit them as hard, and there's other layers that we can put in as well, but, car shows, events like that, I mean, that's, in events similar to that, I mean, they're, I don't think that's as much as what the Gathering Place is doing. So.
Well, and I think too, so the pavilion is now open, and that's a different component of this conversation we haven't talked about yet. We talked a lot about Main Street closures, and I believe right here on the square, we have the pavilion open now, and so we have new options for where some of these events can go to relieve that pressure. That was one of the problems. Hopefully, City Hall will be done soon, and we can get that space back. So there are some different problems that are not necessarily because of these events, but as a downtown, we have some stressors or stress points, I guess. So events, some concerts, some of these events that were in the courtyard here, they could be moved to the pavilion. And that, I believe, that decision, the city would have to work with the county, and I think that's through tourism to schedule and make sure that space is utilized. Same for any of the parks. So there's a lot of room here that we can really build something that works. We just got to think through what that looks like. Okay?
Mind if I add one
Yeah,
more thing?
go ahead.
I do know the point that Councilwoman Sames brought up about the expectation of how much funding will be required for a certain level of service. I think Emily prepared a sample of that. It might have been, it was either you or Stacy or Tracy, but we'll come back with that just shows this size event, because ultimately we too have to decide on some of these routes what police presence is required. I mean, an applicant might not know, whereas the department can say, no, for public safety, this is what we need. So we can come back with a little, like you said, kind of a matrix of, if your event is this big, it's going to cost you a little bit more, but also to that point, maybe there's a cap or some kind of a multiplier or divider in that case if you're not for profit. So we'll bring some samples of that with actual numbers related to the level of service.
All right, so just to kind of put a bow on this part of it, if you do have questions, ideas, please send them so that we know. So we just talked about the matrix for expenses, building in layers for the different type of organizer, I guess is the word, and then the calendar events, which we'll talk about that in a second a little bit more. Was there anything else before I switch my page?
I'll send you a list.
Okay, thank you.
Communication is the big one.
Yes.
If we send questions, do we send them to you or to the whole council?
You can send them to me.
To you, Mayor.
Send everything to me, and I will funnel it down to them. Okay?
Okay, so I'm going to move into Main Street closures. So we did work with tourism to survey the downtown businesses, and it was a very basic survey, but we didn't want it to be too long, and we didn't want it to be too burdensome for people to actually sit down and answer. We did get some responses, and I'm just going to kind of go through just some of the highlights of what we got back. So of the businesses that responded, they did note that right now with the closure of Main Street, that does lead to decreased customer access. So when you close Main Street, you're eliminating parking. People have to park further away. They have to walk. Some people will probably just decide, I'm not going to go eat there. I'm not going to shop there today. That is something that even with this ordinance will probably still be a recurring issue. If we carve out, so Festival of the Horse, for example, if we want to keep that event, that is a closure, and that will impact the ability to access some businesses. But we can work through that. The people who responded, they seemed favorable for the parades that we walked through earlier, Festival of the Horse, but they did note that other events such as concerts or the car shows may be better suited for the pavilion or the parks, that sort of thing. And a lot of people said it just depended on what time the event was. On that note, it seemed like there was really, I would say, a preference for evening events, so after 5 p.m., and also targeting the weekends. I think that's because a lot of the businesses, they're closed, or maybe they're not open. Maybe they're open Saturday but not Sunday, that sort of thing. But when asked if they had a preference on Main Street being closed fully or partially, most people said they actually didn't have a preference. It's the time that really mattered and the communication. So what we did learn from this survey is that, shocker, nobody learns about the events through the city council meetings. Mm-hmm. So that's a big problem, because right now that's the primary way that at least the city is talking about these events. Social media, probably through the event organizers themselves, is where they're hearing of it. And then if there's flyers that go up, or maybe they see the no parking sign that gets posted and they're like, oh, there's an event. The people that responded, expressed an interest in receiving emails or text messages, or even having a calendar on the city's website. Those of you who were here last year, we did talk about how we do have an alert center. I don't know if that's the right word, but we do have this messaging capability, this notification system through our current website, but it's one where people do have to sign up to receive those notifications. So with developing an events calendar and communicating how people can sign up and learn about these events, That's one way we can better utilize our website, I guess. Part of what has been talked about is when someone is applying for an event, for a special event permit, they have to provide their communication plan. So they have to let you all know how they're planning to spread the word about their event, because while you all may be approving or issuing the special event permit, there's a balance here between the event organizer's responsibility to communicate with the surrounding businesses or property owners who are going to be affected versus the city. So it's something we have to balance. Any questions on that? That's just kind of the high notes from the survey. Again, just trying to really target preference on time of day, closures, full, partial, no, and how we could better improve the communication about these types of events.
And when you spoke at the pavilion, you were talking about in the back parking lot,
Yes.
correct? Is what you're calling the
Is
pavilion?
that what that's called?
Yeah, the farmers.
The farmer's market?
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yes, that's it. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, I was like, oops.
No, that's okay. I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, so it's still close to downtown. It's not Main Street, but it is right there.
So was that one of the questions asked to them, to pull it down into the parking lot, away from their businesses, or pro or con? That wasn't.
Some of the questions were open-ended
Okay.
in the sense of tell us what you think, and that was some of the feedback,
Opposed to that, okay.
utilizing the pavilion or parks. Mhm. Any questions on that? No? Okay, so I think that just leads us to, I think what the most important is, and I think we all get it from earlier, but we absolutely need your feedback, and we need to know where you all, especially the new ones coming on board, and you as a council collectively, want the direction of this to go. So I guess if you all want to continue discussion, we can keep it as a standing item on the agenda and just come back and talk about it. We could take a break for a little bit and plan to come back next month, whatever you all want to do. But the big takeaway is we need you to tell us what you want
It sounds like
after we get your questions answered.
the merchants downtown would be happy, sounds like they might be happier if it was just our 5 or 6 things that the city kind of sponsors, our parades, and take everything else off of the street, or at least make sure they don't close anything down before 5 o'clock.
So of the people who responded, that seemed to be the sentiment.
Okay.
But you do have to keep in mind that the merchants downtown might be happier, but would the citizens of Georgetown be happier? I mean, we're asking 13 businesses these questions. And then how many people do they actually have that come to these events? I mean, they run these races that have hundreds of people in them. You know, they have lots of people that come downtown to listen to music. So the 13 people that answered this survey matter greatly, but so do the people that are attending them.
You can take, for example, 5Ks. You've got a whole college that every time they have a 5K, it causes torment and torture on them because they can't get back to their dorms. They have to go, they could be coming back in, and yet now I gotta go find something to do for 2 hours because I can't get back to my dorm room. I've heard that I don't know how many times, over 20+ years.
But they do rent it out for the festival, for the Viking Horsey 100.
I've heard residents over in that area
Yeah.
that have complained over 20 years. Why don't they take the Festival of the Horse and take it to the county park? Police department brought that up, and we were told it won't happen. The Festival of the Horse stays downtown. Okay, I mean, we lived with it, but there are events that disrupt a lot of people in the downtown area, and they're not happy. And it's just not the 13 residents. It's all those that live in the downtown area as well that are not happy with a lot of these events.
So you are right that, you know, the decision, we're balancing many interests here, and the decisions that you all make as a body should be in the best interest of the community. But through this process and cleaning this up, hopefully just creating this better application process and the conditions and putting something in place that will help offset some of these concerns and these pressure points, and to find that balance that's needed.
Because I think if you've got all types of businesses downtown, and some are going to benefit, some are not going to benefit, depending on what the event is and how it works. So, you know, depending on who answered, We don't know that. And, I like the idea of open-ended questions because they need to tell you what the issues are and why, so that we can, again, go back to what's the problem we're trying to solve and what are the solutions that make the best sense, and being able to do that evaluation. But I think this is a great start, but I think it's just one step in a process. And communication is probably the biggest key out of this, is being able to ask the right questions and get the right responses so that you can formulate what the issues are and what you can and can't resolve.
And this is something that if you really wanted to, you could, I don't want to call it, what am I thinking? It's not a hearing, but you could.
Public feedback, do a little bit of a forum.
You could do a forum. I mean, you could kind of, we do this with a couple of things throughout the year, like with a comp plan, that sort of thing. You could create a forum and invite the public to come in and give you that feedback. Like we can do that if that is what you all want. So if that's a step of this process, we've not really talked about that to date, but that is something we can do to spread the communication and get more input.
I'm all for making this leaner so people understand exactly what they're getting into. It's just there are little things that we need to work out. It's a good start.
Okay. All right, so we will plan just to keep this as a standing item. That's what I'm hearing, what you all would like to do. So expect to see it for the next several meetings, I guess. Okay, if I can switch gears to the next item. So the work session ordinance discussion. This was also a council-initiated ordinance from the last council. The difference is this one has had a first reading, so this legislation is active. Just as a reminder, the legislation that was introduced and we had the first reading on, basically the idea was to create a standing work session so that between the two council meetings that you all have each month, there's a dedicated time on the calendar where you all can discuss public business. The idea wouldn't be to vote and take action, but it's just an additional conversation point so that you can get more information about projects or things coming up before you're asked to vote on them, that sort of thing. You have your discussion during these meetings. The idea was just one more opportunity to talk that's regularly scheduled. With this, last year we had several work sessions. Those were special called meetings, and this just goes with the Open Meetings Act. So essentially here you're carving out the step of having to notice a special meeting for a work session each month. That was kind of the general idea. I think part of the idea was also to help facilitate with the council committees. Some of the items that are in the committee level, helping to facilitate some discussion on it before it comes up to the full council, that sort of thing. I don't want to speak out of turn. You are, Councilmember Brent, you're the current sponsor from the first, from the first reading. So if you have anything you'd like to add, feel free. But if not, I'll turn it over for questions. This is a great time for discussion because we've not had the second reading yet. So if there are changes you would like to see or things you want to discuss, we can actually talk about that right now, but we're not taking any action tonight. So, questions?
Well, I was thinking the work session would be just like we're talking about the special events. That's something that could be for the work session because we don't get, because we don't have time all the time to get together, just discuss things. And that's one of the reasons wouldn't that be what we could discuss if this was approved, to have an extra work session together.
So you would set the agenda the way you do for
yes.
Yeah.
I just think it's something that's needed. Personally, myself, I'm okay with giving another day. I mean, I'm a public servant, but I want to make sure we're doing everything right for the community, and that's just the reason behind having a work session to discuss these items.
Could we not put on the current agenda, could we not put an area on there that's just council discussion on each month, or each session that we have here? Can we not put it instead of an action item on there, just like we've done tonight with that, just put down council discussion time to talk about issues that that we need to talk about or want to share with everybody else, or even if like it's the reports or something like that, add it to the current. Now, sometimes that may make the night longer, but we're having one night instead of having the other nights, because I think sometimes you won't need it. And I mean, the current mayor has done a great job of calling a lot of work sessions, which I don't have any problem with work sessions. And the council can call work sessions as well. If they want to call a work session, they can call a special call meeting as a work session. So the mayor can do it, or the council can do it. So if we could add it, maybe a line item to the agenda, actually, we have council comments down there, but council item discussions or something. I don't know what the language should be for it, but something to set aside some time in it, that if any of the council members need an item that they want discussed or brought up or want to look at for the future agendas or something like that, maybe we could set aside some time on this to do that.
That may be where
That
you,
sounds good.
would be a good idea, that if you are thinking about something you want to be brought to the agenda to discuss, that's something maybe you want to let me know about, then I can say, okay, we want to have the discussion on this, and we can put that on the agenda as a discussion item. That makes sense, if that's what I'm hearing you saying.
Sort of. We used to, it's been a while, but we used to have the agenda was set up differently than what it is currently today. But at the end of the agenda, you had the council comments, but at the end of the agenda, you would have a section that was introduction of new items by council. So like if something came along, like the draft for this, instead of doing it under council comments, you would go into that section and you'd say, okay, this is a situation that I see a problem with, and discuss it with the rest of the council. Because I haven't seen the last couple of years the council really having good discussions up here outside of what's on the agenda. So that would let a place be that you can bring up anything, anytime of that meeting, and then be able to have the discussion. Now, maybe you don't take any action at that time, because we're sometimes limited to how we take the action, but then that's an introduction to a situation that may be going on that we may need to take some action on, and then that can prepare the council, give the council time to think about, give the council time to think of questions, and then start the process, kind of like you've done with the draft here, but let the council do the introduction on that and bring it up and talk about it. Because that's what I don't see the last 2 years, is the council really just throwing things out on the table, good or bad, indifferent or not, and just talking about it. It's always what's on the agenda, what's printed on the agenda, so that would give time to talk. Because the citizens are coming up with things too. I've noticed that citizens come up with things and then they don't get addressed because there's not a place on the agenda that allows for that discussion. So like if Ms. Jones came up and she had a street problem, she can do her comments on what she wants. We get down council comments, you could do it, but you get it down to a discussion time and you can say, oh, council, 2 or 3 other people have come to me with that thing. We need to talk about this, and then actually have some conversation about that issue then, and then take it further if we need to take it further.
Well, we could also at that time, if it requires a special work session,
If it does, then we could set that up.
We could do that at that time.
Yeah, and it may be something minor, but we still need to talk about it, and I'm really on this. I like the public to hear what we talk about. I don't like it back behind closed doors. I like it in front. I like a messy kitchen. I want everybody to see it. I don't like it all just prepared and there's the meal. So, and if you come to my house, that's exactly how it is. So.
And what she said is what I couldn't say, but that's exactly. We just need discussion. I want to have more discussion with the council members.
Yes.
That I haven't had in the past years.
Because we're not supposed to be having a whole lot behind closed
Right.
door. We're supposed to be having in the public. So that gives that opportunity.
I totally agree with you.
Would that take care of the problem?
I think so.
So I think part of it too is just remembering that in these meetings, just understanding, especially when there's legislation and in the discussion before you take votes, like you absolutely already have time built in. Take advantage of that time before you make a vote or before we decide to have the discussion that you need. Sometimes we get caught up in it and we move through. So just a reminder for you all, like that discussion time, at least for agenda items, is built in. Sometimes it's just not written out. So as a process standpoint, just remember that. But Mayor Jenkins, if this idea of adding this, what did you call it? Introduction to new items, something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
We used to have, Steve Glass is here. He was on the council at the time, if I remember correctly. But we had it was actually two different line items that you actually kind of had that introduction discussion, and then you would come back to the next council meeting and have another discussion on that issue if the council wanted to proceed with discussion. It was just to, government is slow enough, maybe we slowed it down too much, but it was just to slow it down so the public had time to hear, because the public, like you said, they're not listening to the council meetings. They kind of read the newspaper, but they're not listening to the council meeting. They're really not reading the newspaper, but the buzz gets around. It just takes a little while for it to get around. So if we slow the process down, the buzz gets around so that people can then hopefully be a part of their government by calling us, contacting us, getting their peace of mind on it. And so that's all. But I think the council needs to talk more. I haven't seen a lot of it the last couple of years, and I think the council needs to talk more with each other publicly.
So are we actually changing the process by which we're going to bring things to the council is one of my questions. And if that's the case, then let's lay it out and define what it is. And then everything goes through that process. And hopefully, that gives you the opportunity to be able to do some things similar to what we've already done tonight, of being able to provide some input into something prior to action to help narrow and kind of get to where we are. I think it also potentially could give you the opportunity for other types of reports that come in just for information sharing, whether those be department reports or other things, to remind the general public about what they need to be doing, what their roles and responsibilities are, in addition to our roles and responsibilities as the city. So just a thought.
Yeah, I think that's really good, and I think one distinction there too is that, and I'm glad that this is the case for the first meeting with this council, that we had those two council member initiated items. So obviously, the mayor presides over the meetings, it's the mayor's agenda, but not everything that goes on the agenda is the mayor's. I've seen, not necessarily with this administration, but I've seen situations where something was on the agenda just because a council member wanted it. The mayor at the time opposed it, but he knew that the council needed to vote on it. So while you can build in that agenda item, kind of new business, whatever you want to call it, so that you can bring forth items that you think, the budget and the legislation, right? Those are the bread and butter of the council. So you can say, hey, I see this issue. I want to change the policy. I want to change the law on this. And those are those discussion points. But also, if there's ever anything that you really want on the agenda, kind of like Councilman Stone did, I want this ordinance discussed. And so that's kind of the impetus for this entire conversation. So you can still get it out there to talk about publicly and have your messy kitchen, but ultimately, just call the mayor. And if you say, I want this agenda item, I want it discussed, or you can bring it up in that new introductory spot. But there's always that avenue to say, he can tell you no, I guess, but you can always say, I want this on the agenda.
Right.
And I've seen that a lot. So.
Yeah, we used to call all the council members just to make sure that they didn't have something on their mind that they'd want to, which is great communication between the mayor's office and the council to put on the agenda. Did you want something in particular? But I think if you just put the discussion up, then everybody has the opportunity, even if they can't think on Wednesday, oh, I should have said this to put on the agenda and I didn't realize it. And a lot of times where we don't get the agenda much too early, then we don't have that time to do things. So I think it'd be a great line item, just put it on there. And there may be some weeks there is absolutely no discussion for anybody with anything extra that's not on the agenda. Or you may say, Kieran talks too much and we're not going to start her on that because she'll take all the time. So, you can pass over it if there's nothing there on that week.
But am I hearing that we don't need to add officially the third meeting? That we can take care of it another way? That's what I thought I heard. Okay.
So at the next meeting, where the second reading is scheduled for, if you don't want this work session ordinance that's been presented, you would just vote no.
Okay.
And you can vote it down, and that'll be done with it.
But I guess, is there ways to improve it to actually solve some of the additional issues that may be out there?
The work session ordinance or the current?
Both.
Well, so with the work sessions, like the way you improve it, I guess it's not really a way to improve it because you already have the ability to call these special meetings when you need them. So you already have that tool in your toolbox, and that's just if a majority of you all want it, You just ask for it.
Well, and you talk about the underlying problem, I think you all have identified that as wanting to inject a means for more just loose discussion of the topic. So
Right.
we can find a way to build that into the meetings where items that aren't on the agenda that popped into your head Monday morning at 6 a.m., you can say, hey, I've really seen this issue. I think we should look at what our ordinance provides and see if there's anything we can do to change it. And boom, your discussion starts there. So I think that's another solution, just building that in.
Because I
Even
think
if there's nothing that ends up being on anybody's mind that night.
Because the thing, if you discuss it here, then you may get enough people saying, no, I don't want to do that, and then you're like, okay, I'll take that back, and your discussion kind of ends, and then you don't spend time asking the mayor to have you all do work and spend time doing something that nobody else is going to support you on or is interested in, so.
Okay, all right. I think I have one more item. So with the turnover and the new council, there's a need to just shift a couple of details on our regular meeting schedule for the council committees. So you have a resolution before you. Essentially, it's changing the meeting time for the Public Works Committee, I believe, shifting it to 4:30 on the third Wednesday, and then changing the location of the fire committee meeting from the community room at the police department to the fire department's new training center. So that's the resolution that's before you for a vote tonight. And this is for this current fiscal year. So when this fiscal year ends, we'll look at doing a new schedule for the new fiscal year. And if there's any other changes or things, 6 months down the road, the time's not working, look, whatever, we can also look at that as part of a future resolution. Any questions on that? No? Okay.
I need a motion.
Motion.
Motion made by Ms. Sams. Do I have a second? Second made by Ms. Mitchell. Are there further questions or comments? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say likewise. Thank you. Before we move to the next item, there's a couple of things I failed to mention earlier. One is that staff and myself are going to the Elected Officials Academy this week, which will start Wednesday through Friday. And of course, this is training that's open up to council and that wants to do that. And of course, we will make sure that your expenses for that is paid for as for the registration for that. And like I said, it's a great opportunity to come in and actually get some up-to-date information on policy procedures, of council members and also as the mayor, something that you may want to keep in mind. And one other thing, I don't know if I mentioned this, but if I did, just pardon me. The traffic committee meets on the third Monday each month at 4:30 at the police community room, and the two committee members are Todd Stone and Michael Chris is on that committee. So I don't know if I think I may fail to have mentioned that earlier. So that's my some-timers. I don't have all-timers. I got some-timers. So sometime I remember things as it is. So next we have the city engineer, item 10, municipal order for the street dedication and for Barkley Mellors units numbers 2 and 3. So we'll let Eddie Hightower come up and he'll give us a little history about that and then some information.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. For those of you who are not familiar with street dedications, basically how it works is a new subdivision, a phase of a new subdivision is built, all the roads are in, all the stormwater's in, all the infrastructure's been put in, and they go to planning and zoning, and they do a final walkthrough and a final punch list, make sure everything is properly installed, and then at that time they do a street dedication where it goes from the developer's hands over to the city and it becomes a city asset and part of our road miles that we have and the stormwater systems and all the other systems that we have, the water systems, all get dedicated over to the city. And so this is a street dedication. This specific one is for Barkley Meadows, which is a subdivision out on 62 heading to Cynthiana Road, right before you get to the Lambs Run Business Park. On your left is that subdivision, and ask for you all to accept these streets from the developer as city assets with this municipal order.
I need a motion.
Motion.
Motion made by Ms. Sams. Do I have a second? Second made by Mr. Hampton. Are there further questions and or comments?
Question, Eddie. So at this subdivision, how much is it built out already? How many vacant lots are still out there?
I haven't done a house count. There probably are some vacant lots that are still, haven't been built on yet. And so the only thing that's really not completed is some of the sidewalks in some of the vacant lots may not be in yet because they won't put those in until the house is built. And typically, because if you put them in first, you tear them all out and you end up doing it twice.
Right.
So,
Right.
so it's pretty well, we don't usually do a house count percentage. I can in the future if you would like to see that. But that is not something that typically is done.
So is there a prohibition then, once they've been dedicated, to cutting the streets for new construction?
Yes, they have to get a permit through my office, through the city engineer's office for utility cuts and those sorts of things. And we require them to post a bond. We require them to have the right insurance. There's a application process, and then we check and make sure that they put everything back the way it was.
Great, thank you.
Are there further questions and or comments? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say likewise. Thank you.
Thank you.
At this time on council comments, just a reminder that, at this time, is an opportunity for council to, express if there's any concern that has been brought up your way, let us know about. Also, again, and from our previous discussion earlier, if you get after the meeting and someone contacts you about something, if you would forward that to us, and if something that we, like I said, we may need to discuss more on, we can get on the agenda, or if something that we can get an answer to right away, we can get that information taken care of. I will assign it to a staff member, take care of that, and then I will follow up with each council member that's involved as to how do we came to that solution. So at this time, you have a minute, not a minute, but you have the time to say. I'm going to start with Mr. Crisp at the end, if you want to council comments, anything.
All right, thank you. I'd like to first thank everybody in the community for all the hard work they put in over the last very challenging week to week and a half with all the snow that we had, from first responders to even unsung heroes like grocery store workers and young people out shoveling snow so we could all get to work and be safe in the community. So thank you very much for that. And then also, this is my first council meeting. I'm very humbled and honored to be here and excited to be serving alongside you, Mr. Mayor, and everyone here on City Council, as well as everyone out in our gallery tonight. So many city employees and also citizens that came out to hear what is going on in the community. You guys care about community involvement, and every one of you here tonight, it's proving just how much we love Georgetown and our community, and everyone, I guess, watching on YouTube as well. So thank you.
Ms. Stamps.
He was so kind. All right, I have questions, and actually, part of these questions are exactly what the discussion would be better for discussion time than just questions. But a few of them that I have. One is streetlights. Okay. We have a lot of streetlights. Now I get older, I can't see as well at night and all that kind of good thing. So, like out on the strip of Paris Pike, from the railroad crossing to Wendy's, there's 6 streetlights out there. And then, because I know we finally got some new streetlights in, but how are we handling the old? Is it simply by people calling in and saying they're out, or is the police, when they get out, do they, at night, because they're about the only one out, do they make recommendations or call in to say that we'd have streetlights?
There's several ways you can do this. I think
Okay.
one, and I think this happened in the past, so if someone notices the streetlights are out, they can, of course, if they let you know, you can let me know, and then,
Okay.
of course, what I do, I let Eddie know, and then police will go out and check on that, and then they will make a report to KU, and KU will Matter of fact, on my street was an issue, and it took a while, but they finally got to it and started that. So that's
Okay.
the process.
Well, there's 6 on Paris Pike, there's 2 at the end of Showalter Drive, and I think there's some on Main Street out here just to start
If you
with.
send me those, what they are, and like I said, we'll just start the process
Okay.
from there.
Okay, for that, and then on, I'd like to talk about the policy of our take-home vehicles. Is there a policy currently for the take-home vehicles?
There is.
There is.
And we can get that to you.
Yes, I'd like to have the policy of that, and that's something I would love to see, get the policy, but then maybe have a council discussion on that. And then the onboarding issue of our email, we didn't get our email. We didn't get on the email, and now I'm just going to put this out there. I am technology, and I do not get along to start with. But I didn't understand. There was not something telling us how to do it or what was our responsibility was or any of that kind of stuff. So yesterday I was irate. Today I'm not irate. But it leads me to, I don't understand what the IT person does, because I finally figured out, NetGain called me today that we're supposed to go straight to NetGain, not with the IT. So we have an IT person, correct? Because that's a new position since I left. What is their responsibility? What do they do?
We'll give you exactly a job description of what they do and all the information that, I can get that to you.
Would absolutely love to have that, and I would like to know what their salary is. And the third thing, where are they? Where are they located?
They are located right now on, what street is the?
Police Department.
Police Department at this point in time, but once we get back to City Hall and everything, I think they'll probably located them there. They'll be with us there.
They'll come back into the City Hall. Okay, well, that was a big issue for me, and I talked to a couple of the other council members, new ones, and I think they had issues too. And then we had a letter that came to all the council and members, because she told me that all the council members got it. This would be a great thing of discussion. But on this list of concerns the citizen has, there's at least 2 items that are definitely in your bailiwick. It's not ours. And I texted her and told her that those belong to you, that they're your responsibilities. One talks about the cemetery and one talks about some code enforcement issues. And then she asked us to look at some policies. So I'll save this, since we're going to start doing discussions. I'll save that, but I do want you to have it for the ones that is your attention and that you need to look at. So I'll get you that, and I'll get your staff this letter.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Minky.
Thank you, Mayor. Obviously, my first council meeting as well, so I wanted to thank the citizens of Georgetown for their confidence in me, and I'm honored to serve and glad to be here doing that. And then, similar to Michael's comments, I think the staff here has done a phenomenal job over the last couple weeks with the weather and all that. And you know, everybody's got great intentions, and we all have responsibilities. You know, it's not just the people that pick up the trash. It's not just the people that clean the streets. You know, everybody's got a role and responsibility to help. But I think communication is the key there, and I think there was a lot of communication out there, but, you know, maybe we can tune that up a little bit. And so I'd love to sit down and talk about that a little bit, of how we can improve communication and put some metrics out there and those kinds of things that help communicate to the public more of what's happening and those kinds of things. But thank you, Mayor. Enough for tonight.
Ms. Brand?
I don't have anything, but I am very excited with the new members that are back on board, or the new members that are coming, but I'm looking forward to working with each and every one of you all. Sounds like we're going to be on the same page here. So, thank you.
Mr. Hampton?
Thanks, Mayor. I guess, first of all, welcome new council members and new old council members.
Why didn't you say oh?
I'm older than you are. Secondly, Robert and Chiefs out there, I mean, you all did a bang-up job with the snow removal, traffic control, and everything. So, great job on that. And you know, hopefully, like the mayor said in his comments, you know, that was an event. You know, we haven't had that in a long time, but everyone responded well. So, congratulations to you, and send along that to each and every one of your department employees. And I guess lastly, we've got 2 years under this council, so we've got a lot of work to do, and we've got, I think we've got a good bunch here. So let's, get to work and let's get it done. Thank you.
All right, okay. Ms. Mitchell?
I just want to say it's good to be back. This is a great group of people from top to bottom, and I missed it, and it's really good to be back. So that's it.
Last but not least, Mr. Stone.
Thank you, sir. The fire department, the police department, they were out there busting their backsides through all this, as well as Robert and his whole crew. 12-hour shifts, and they were after it. The other next thing I've got, I know that Republic is working on the trash issues. However, Pleasant Valley has been missed 2 weeks in a row.
Send it to me.
And, Republic put out that everything was going to be bumped a day. Pleasant Valley was missed. I had one of the residents I spoke to said that he is storing trash in his basement because the cans were full. And he sent me a text message just before we got going here, and they missed him again. So this is, they got to, I know it's been a big issue with the snow. Don't get me wrong, it's tough. But, when they go around to other neighborhoods and pick up trash, if they're going to bump it, they got to go back and pick up. If it's whatever day they missed, they got to go back and pick up that day. That just, people storing trash in their houses is unacceptable. So, other than that, that's all I got.
All right. Thank you all for being here. If there's no other further business to be brought to this council, this meeting is adjourned.